It is 11 p.m. on a Sunday. You are sitting at your kitchen table, bills stacked on the left, bank statement face down on the right. You already know the math doesn't work. You knew before you sat down. This is not a budgeting problem. This is not a discipline problem. This is a threshold problem. There is a specific dollar amount sitting in a bank account somewhere in America that completely rewires how a person's financial brain operates. Not $1 million, not 6 figures, not some number you'd find on a Forbes list. $20,000. I know what just happened in your head. That sounds too small to change anything. That is exactly what the machine wants you to think. Because once you cross $20,000 in savings and investments, not a penny more, the rules of money stop working against you. They start working for you. The compounding math shifts, your psychology shifts, your leverage at work shifts. And most Americans working full-time, paying taxes, doing everything right, have no idea this threshold even exists, let alone how to cross it. Today, we're going to cut this open. Financial autopsy. No anesthesia. Let's begin. Here are the bare bones, the facts the system doesn't put on a billboard. The Federal Reserve's own research shows that 57% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. Not $4,000, $400. That is a car repair. That is a trip to the ER without good insurance. That is a broken refrigerator in July. Meanwhile, Vanguard research confirms that even a $2,000 emergency buffer increases measurable financial well-being by 21%. Not a life-changing sum, but a physiological shift in how the brain actually processes risk. Here is what psychologists call the scarcity trap. When your checking account is empty, your brain enters a neurological state identical to physical hunger. Every financial decision gets routed through the same cortex that handles immediate survival threats. You can't think long-term. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for strategic planning, for delayed gratification, for seeing past next Tuesday, goes dark. Think of your financial brain as a hospital. When you have no savings, the emergency room is always packed. Every dollar is a trauma case bleeding out on a gurney, triage mode, all day, every day. When you hit $20,000, the ER finally clears out. The hospital can now schedule surgeries, deliberate, strategic, wealth-building procedures on your own terms. Here is what nobody tells you about the math. Saving $1,000 per month at 8% annual return gets you to your first $20,000 in approximately 19 months. But here is where the skeletal math becomes almost supernatural. Your second $20,000 takes only 17 months, not 19. Your third $20,000 takes 15 months. And once your portfolio crosses $400,000, you generate a new $20,000 every 5 months, automatically, while you sleep. But before I tell you the escape, you need to understand the predator. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send a bill. It works in the background every single day. Inflation. If your $20,000 sits idle in a standard checking account earning next to nothing, inflation is consuming roughly $620 of your purchasing power every single year. You saved $20,000. Inflation is quietly eating $620 of it annually without ever asking your permission. The money that feels safe is getting smaller every day you leave it untreated. Let me zoom in now. Not the abstract math, not the Fed data, your actual life. The $20,000 doesn't automatically upgrade your financial brain. The number is not magic. What is magic is what you had to become to get there. To save $20,000 starting from zero in America today, you had to say no, repeatedly, out loud, sometimes alone, to things that other people said yes to without blinking. You skipped the new car smell. You watched your friends post vacation photos from Cabo while you packed lunch in a break room. You sat with discomfort instead of reaching for something on Amazon to make it go away. That process, that sustained, unglamorous discipline, is the upgrade. The $20,000 is just the receipt. And here is where most Americans make the one mistake that costs them everything. They treat the receipt like a prize. They earned the vacation. They deserved the new car. They finally bought the thing they'd been denying themselves for 2 years. And in 8 months, they're back at zero. Not because they're stupid. Not because they're weak. Because nobody ever told them. The $20,000 is not a reward. It is the seed. Left alone to compound at 7% annual return, that $20,000 becomes $160,000 in 30 years, without you touching it, without you thinking about it, while you are living your life. The same discipline that got you to 20,000. If you just don't touch it, does 8 times the work for you while you sleep. Stay with me, because this next part is the reason I made this video. The average American spends between $600 and $800 per month on transportation, car payment, insurance, gas maintenance. Over 40 years, that is between $288,000 and $384,000 gone. And the moment a new car rolls off the dealership lot in anywhere, USA, it drops roughly 20% in value. You didn't buy freedom. You financed a shrinking asset on a monthly payment plan. Meanwhile, that same $700 per month, the person sitting in the shiny new car is stressed about the payment. The person in the reliable 2019 Honda is quietly building generational wealth on the same commute. Ask yourself honestly, how many financial decisions are you making right now based on survival, not strategy? How many times this week did you say yes to something you didn't choose? You just couldn't afford to say no. That is not weakness. That is the scarcity trap operating exactly as designed, and it is not your fault. The advertising industry, the auto loan industry, lifestyle creep itself, it is all engineered to keep you spending before you ever reach the threshold. Because a person with $20,000 saved is harder to sell to. They negotiate differently. They walk differently. They think in years, not pay periods. Here is the part most people never find out. When you have $20,000 saved, something quietly shifts at work. You develop what I call your quiet exit strategy. Not because you are going to quit tomorrow, because you could, and your nervous system knows it suddenly. You ask for the raise, because the worst they can say is no, and you'll survive either way. You push back on the toxic project, because you are not afraid of the consequence anymore. You take the interview, just to see, because 3 months of runway gives you real negotiating leverage. You don't even have to use the quiet exit strategy. Just having it changes your posture. People in the room notice. Opportunities find you differently. The $20,000 you never spend earns more for your career than your resume ever will. All right, autopsy complete. The escape is simpler than you think. Here it is. First, split the $20,000 into 2 separate buckets. Bucket 1 is your defensive line, 3 to 6 months of your actual living expenses, sitting in a high-yield savings account. This is your untouchable emergency fund. Car breaks down. This is the fund. Job disappears. This is the fund. Anything else, do not touch this fund. Bucket 2 is your offense. Everything above your emergency reserve goes into investments immediately. Not next month, not after the holidays. Now second, max your 401k match before anything else. If your employer matches up to 4% of your salary, contribute at least 4%. Every dollar you leave unmatched is a guaranteed 100% return you walked away from. There is no better investment in America than free employer money, known. Third, open a Roth IRA and fill it every year. Roth IRA growth is tax-free. You invest after tax dollars today. You pay 0 tax on decades of compounding gains when you withdraw. This is the single most powerful legal tax shelter available to middle-class Americans, and most of them have never opened one. Fourth, invest in low-cost S&P 500 index funds, not individual stocks. Not hot tips. Vanguard VU, Fidelity FODSROX, expense ratio under 0.05%. Automatic diversification across 500 of the largest American companies. This is the exact strategy Warren Buffett has publicly recommended for non-professional investors, repeatedly, on the record, for over a decade. You don't need a hedge fund, you need patience and a brokerage account. Fifth, protect the threshold aggressively. The $20,000 is not a decoration on your bank statement. It is the structural foundation that everything else is built on. Lifestyle inflation is the enemy, the quiet one that arrives the same day your raise does. Every time your income levels up, do not level up your spending first. Direct the raise to investments. Let the compounding engine accelerate. The goal is not to look wealthy. The goal is to become wealthy. And those two things are almost never found in the same driveway. Go back to that kitchen table, 11 p.m. on a Sunday. Bills on the left, bank statement on the right, the math not working. Here is the truth I want to leave you with. That moment, that exact feeling you've had, is not a character flaw. It is a design flaw, a system designed to keep you reactive, spending, and financially dependent on the next paycheck for the rest of your working life. $20,000 is not a fortune, but it is the first structural act of rebellion against that system. Build the threshold. Defend the threshold. Let it work for you in silence, while everyone around you is still working for their stuff. The autopsy is complete. The diagnosis, the system was counting on you never knowing this existed. Now you do. If this changed how you see money, share it with one person who is still asleep at that kitchen table. They need this more than you do. Subscribe if you want to keep dissecting the machine that was designed to keep you working forever. One more autopsy coming next week. Don't miss it.